Welcome to World Without You, a Sims 4 story inspired by Belinda Carlisle songs. If you have not watched previous episodes yet, please go watch them. If you watched the previous videos, you already know what to do with the music. So let's just get right into the story. Before we start, I'd just like to say that I received my Belinda Carlisle Gold 3-disc set in the mail today that I had ordered. I used her merch bar store link on the YouTube page to order this. I'm pretty sure every song that I'm going to use in this series is on these CDs. The exception being when I use more than one version of a song, such as that other version of World Without You. You only get one version of that song. And now, episode 5 of World Without You. Maybe it was just the freedom of listening to that music. I don't know. I must have been going crazy, thinking I would somehow write a story and make it come true. But I kept thinking that maybe if I can show Ivy what's really going on without really showing her, maybe it would soften the blow. I needed to treat her like she was still the lead character and not the villain. But I had nowhere to start. I had never written a story before. Maybe a writing class could help me. Maybe drama could help me. But I didn't know. I would have to look for inspiration and ideas and characters. I need some sort of fantasy element. I would take breaks from trying to write and listen to the music and go back and jot down a few ideas. But it was a hodgepodge. I stopped to check the weather. Said it was maybe going to be cool tomorrow, so I figured I'd better go plan something. When I got over to the wardrobe, I caught my reflection in the mirror, and it brought back a memory. It had only been a few weeks since I stood next to my mother as we tried on dresses. I remember how nervous she was. We had gone to a few other bridal salons before we arrived at Lexi's lovely lace. She just wasn't comfortable looking around the other ones. By then I was struggling with the words to encourage her. I just wanted her to try something on. I thought maybe if I try something on, we could get the ball rolling. And that might encourage her. I really liked this black dress I was looking at. So I went and tried it on. I love the dress. But I noticed that my hair had been faded by the pool water. I put my hair up in a twist real quick to try to set the mood for when my mother came over. There's my Tiffany girl. You look stunning. My mother was starting to wonder if we were alone. Nobody had come out to greet us or to put a sales pitch on us yet. And that's when a lady came out and said, "Hello, welcome to Lexi's. I'm Fiona. How are you both today? Are you looking for anything in particular? My mom needs a wedding dress." "How lovely." "It doesn't have to be too fancy, just something simple." "Mom, come on now. This is your wedding dress." "You deserve a nice dress, Mom." Well, let's take a look at some options. I'm sure we can find something good. So do you have any colors in mind? Or materials? Well, we might like to go with something white, but we're not sure yet. My mother had finally loosened up a bit, and I saw that she was looking at a particular dress. So I said, Mom, you need to go try that on. And she did. For the first time in years, I saw my mother wearing a color that wasn't black. She looked amazing. She said she loved this dress, but something just wasn't right. She wasn't feeling the white color. I knew that was such a big step for her to try on this dress, so I gave her a hug and said, We're getting there, Mom. And then Fiona came over and said, That hug just gave me a wonderful idea. I think you're really gonna like it. She whispered it to my mother so that I would be surprised. When we went to get the dress on the day of the wedding, I knew it was perfect. We all knew it. Fiona had captured what I was trying to tell my mother. It was time to live and love again, and Neil would still be with her forever. Now you're gonna go walk that aisle, and you're gonna be happy. Ellie was right about drama. Fiona had given my mother the costume to show her emotion and to tell her story when words couldn't do it alone. And, and that's when I realized I wasn't just working on a story. I was making a play. It would have characters and costumes, and I would tell the story. I just needed more elements to my story. I would have to look for inspiration. There had to be some. I managed to get through another walk to school with Ivy. And then art class came, and Miss Stone made her entrance. That outfit she was wearing. She looked like she had just returned from looking for the lost city of gold. Apparently Miss Stone was going to do show and tell today. She brought a small crystal with her and told us a story of how she found it and how certain crystals are said to have magical auras that give off vibes or energy that can affect emotions or moods. I mean, it's said to be a myth, but there are many people around the world who believe in it. She showed us a video of some of the places she had been, and then our assignment for the day was to paint landscapes. She told us to imagine a place that she might have gone to find these crystals. It was kind of funny to notice that we all painted something very similar. I just had to hear more about these crystals and her adventures. So I asked her to come over and I had a nice long talk with her. And soon Marissa and Dean joined in. Ivy and Harold were chatting amongst themselves. The discussion about the crystals gave me an idea. I would have a forest with those crystals that placed everyone under an enchantment, a spell. Marissa came over and said she really liked my painting. I said I liked hers too. And I had remembered from the other day she had asked for help with crying. Maybe I could make a character for her that couldn't cry. Next up was baking with Miss Norwood. Today we were going to do brownies. So she gave us a lesson on cocoa and chocolate making and some of the history. She also talked about when the first brownies were made, some of the controversies over who made brownies first. One early version was by the Palmer House Hotel in Chicago. It was more like a cake with chocolate, walnuts, and an apricot glaze. Fanny Farmer had a version that was made with molasses but did not contain chocolate. Marie Kelly from Wisconsin had a recipe published for her brownies food. Miss Norwood said that today we were making the Bangor brownies. Housewives in Bangor, Maine had a recipe that had an extra egg and more chocolate. I thought to myself, maybe I could incorporate some sort of food element into the story. It could either be part of a spell or something used to break the spell. Ivy had done a much better job today, so I felt I should go give her some support and compliment her. Wow, those brownies smell good. You did a good job. Thanks, Tiff. And then the three of us chatted for a bit, as did everybody else. And it was time for the next class. Good afternoon, everybody. How are we all today? Nice to see you, Darian. And Dean. Miss Tiffany. And Harold. Ivy. And Maribel. And how are you today, Marissa? Today, we're going to talk about the plot and the subplot. The plot is usually the main story, but you can also have a subplot, a secondary story. It branches off from the main story, and sometimes, but not all, will merge back in with your main story. It can also be referred to as a play within a play, or a story within a story. William Shakespeare used to use the subplot, or play within a play. He's one of the more famous ones. Can you think of any stories or movies that used more than one plot or subplot in them? We went over a few movies and stories and such. We talked about how in some of those stories the subplot mattered and helped the main story, and in some of them it would have been possible to not have a subplot, such as in movies when they cut out certain elements to shorten time, and then later you get a director's cut that has more of the subplot added. Later on, as we worked on our stories, I noticed that Fiona looked a little tired, so I asked her if everything was okay. She said that she had been working extra hours at the bridal salon because Lexi was getting close to retirement and wasn't there as much, and that they were short-handed. She'd been doing a lot of last-minute alterations, and more orders were coming in constantly. And homecoming season was almost here. A lot of people were trying to cram in their fall wedding before the cooler weather came. She said she really enjoyed her night off last night, and she was happy to spend it with us. I said, "If I know anybody who can help you out, I'll certainly send them your way." "That would be much appreciated." I felt bad for her. I really didn't know anybody that could help her. I didn't know any seamstresses. I had occasionally done a little bit of sewing at home when I needed to stitch up a tear or something and didn't want to bother my mom. But I certainly didn't know enough to be working on any of those important dresses. As I entered drama class, Ellie was sitting in a chair with a radio on the stage. We all just took our seats, and then DeMarcus came in and asked to see Miss Bird out in the hall. She came back in and said, "Y'all, I have some bad news for you. DeMarcus made the football team. His daddy's making him do the football and doesn't want to pay for no drama class. So he won't be able to join us no more. It's a shame, 'cause I think he was really liking drama class." Alright, y'all. Today, I'm gonna play this here radio. We're gonna talk about some other elements of drama. She turned on the radio and different bits of movie themes played. She had one from Rocky, and one from Superman and Star Wars, and one from Gone with the Wind, and she even threw in Moon River from Breakfast at Tiffany's. And then she stopped the tape. "So, y'all, my first question to you is, when you listen to those, do you see the movie in your mind? Did you recognize those? If you seen the movies, you probably did. What y'all was listening to was Rocky by Bill Conti, and you had John Williams with Star Wars and Superman. We had Gone with the Wind by Max Steiner, and then y'all had Moon River by Henry Mancini. That song's from Breakfast at Tiffany's. Those were some movies with different kinds of dramas, and they use that music to intensify the drama. Even when there's no words being spoken, that music can make you feel something, make you feel the emotion of the drama. It can set the scene, and it'll keep you following along. Now I'm going to play some other clips for you. Listen real closely. Now y'all think about them sounds. Were you hearing the real sounds? Or was that some sort of sound effect? Hard to tell, huh? Well, sound effects, or Foley, are a part of drama. They used them in radio dramas, in TV and movies, Back in the day, they used some in plays. Sound effects is named after a fella named Foley, Jack Donovan Foley. Back in the early days of movies when they first started doing sound movies, he had to come up with ways of making sounds to be recorded for them movies. And he would use various things that would sound like the real thing. They would put some cornstarch in a leather satchel and mush on it and make the sound of snow crunching. Back in Shakespeare times, they might have used a cannonball rolling around a wooden box to make thunder noises. These days they might use a large piece of metal and shake it. Some of y'all might have seen that Monty Python movie, the one with the coconuts. Well, that's how they made the horses' sounds back in the day. They'd tap them coconuts together and it'd sound like a horse. So I guess what my lesson's about is that drama and movies and TV and plays all involve a lot of teamwork and behind the scenes things. You got the music and the sounds and the costumes, and you have lighting and props. You have all those things that have to come together, and many different people doing many different jobs to make your production a good one, to tell the drama and the emotion. They all work together for that. And you can remember it when you see it or hear it. Sometimes you can almost touch it. Ellie's words really hit home. There was no way I was going to do this alone. Who was I kidding? Later on, she had us pick from a selection of scripts for different plays so that we could study them and see what it would be like to follow a play script. Sometimes we'd get up and try another one, but that's all we did. Just a nice quiet ending to the day. One thing was for sure. If I was going to pull this off, I was going to have to learn to let go a bit. I suggested to Harold in front of Ivy that maybe he should walk her home. And he agreed. And that I had some things I needed to do. Once the noise died down, I could hear what sounded like snoring coming from the creative writing class. So I went to check. And sure enough, Fiona was taking a little nap. I felt really bad. I just had to find out if there was some way I could help her. And I felt I was gonna need her help. Somehow. Miss Kimbrough, I don't know a lot about sewing, but is there any way I can help you out at the shop? I mean, do you need an assistant, or is there any little small jobs you could show me how to do? I'd love to learn how. Well, would you like to come by and we could see if there is something you can help with? If anything, to try to keep me from falling asleep? That sounds like a good plan. Thank you, Tiffany. I appreciate the help. Neither of us needed to go home after school, and since it was raining, she said she'd drive us over there, but first we'd get some drive-through. They were redoing the parking lot in the rear of the building, so we had to park across the street. But I was in a good mood, so I didn't mind the rain. Fiona gave me a little bit of a tour, and then we sat down to eat our burgers. Fiona said that for about a year, Lexi had only been working during the day on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and that because Fiona had to teach during the week, she was only able to do evenings and weekends, and mostly by appointment, because she needed the time to work on the dresses. So the shop has not been open very much, but because of the reputation, they're still very busy. Miss Kimbrough, when did you start working here? I was in high school, and I needed to get a dress for a dance, but I didn't have any money. I came in here and was looking at the dresses. And when Lexi wanted to help me, I had to tell her that I couldn't afford a dress. And she said that if I would stay and learn how to make a dress, she would let me make one. And that's how I got my dress. And I've learned from her, and I've been working here ever since. And working here put me through college so I could become a teacher. Have you thought about what you might like to do? Any plans for when you graduate? Well, Miss Kimbrough, to be honest, I'm still a bit undecided. I'm still kicking around several options, trying to figure it all out. But I've had some ideas lately. Man, those burgers sure hit the spot. Yeah. What do you say we go get started? When we got to the sewing room, I was expecting to see piles and piles of dresses and clutter, but instead, things were neat and organized, and she only had one dress back there that she was working on. She said she preferred it that way, and so did Lexi. Years ago, Lexi had messed up a couple of orders by mixing two dresses with each other. She swore never to make that mistake again, and always kept dresses separate. Okay, Tiffany. I only have one dress left to work on. I've been able to catch up this week, even though I stayed a lot of late hours. So I'm gonna have you do some practice on some of the scrap fabrics. And just see if you can get a feel for the machine and make some straight lines. And keep me company and make sure I don't fall asleep. And we'll be all caught up in no time. And then I can show you some other things. That sounds great, Miss Kimbrough. After about 2 hours or so, she called me over and said, Here, I'm gonna let you do the last little bit here. But Miss Kimbrough, I might mess it up. That's okay. There's nothing you're gonna do to that dress that I can't fix. But I don't think you're gonna mess it up. I believe in you. Just remember, sewing is like a heartbeat. You just have to let the machine breathe and feel it beating. I couldn't believe it. I was working on a wedding dress. This was a wedding dress. Somebody's wedding dress. The most important thing they'd ever wear. And she was trusting me to work on it. I wasn't worthy. You did an excellent job. I'm proud of you. That was so scary. I was so scared. That's good. It means you don't think you're perfect. And that's all you need. You just need to be humble, and you'll do fine. After that, she got out a box of homecoming dresses that had come in that needed fixing. They had various tears and loose threads, and she said that she was thankful that I was here because that was what was really overwhelming her. knowing that that whole box needed fixing, and that that would make her really behind. So we both got to work, sewing and chatting. I loved it. While I was sewing, I noticed out of the corner of my eye a photograph in a frame sitting on this desk. It was a picture of a man. I tried to resist, but I just had to ask, "Miss Kimbrough, is this Lexi's husband in this photograph?" And she stopped and said, "That's a picture of someone. That's very special. You're sitting at my desk. I'm sitting at Lexi's. That's a man that I met many years ago. I was on a trip to Europe while doing a summer internship. I've never told anybody the whole story. Not even Lexi knows the real story. One of the things you'll learn about doing this job, if you keep doing it, is that you have to learn confidentiality. Brides are going to come in here and they're going to tell you things, and you won't be able to tell anyone. Not their sisters, not their maid of honor, not their daughters. You cannot tell. You mean my mother probably told you things that you can't tell me. That's right. Your mother did tell me some things. Not to worry. There's nothing bad. But she did tell me things. And so do a lot of people. And I don't tell anybody. I don't tell my friends. I don't tell anybody. I completely understand, Miss Kimbrough. And I'm very thankful that there are people like you for people to confide in. Thank you so much for helping my mother. I've never seen her so happy. I'm very glad to hear you say that, Tiffany. I've been meaning to tell someone the real story for a long time. I think it's about time I told somebody. I've got the feeling I can trust you. Am I right, Miss Kimbrough? I feel the same, and I'd love to tell you what's on my mind too. I'll tell you mine first. So I was on a summer internship to France. I was in college and I didn't know yet what I wanted to do, but I had taken some journalism classes and writing classes, and I had thought about maybe becoming an author. So I thought maybe this trip would do me some good. And I had studied French and was working at a French newspaper in a small town, and interviewed a few locals, and there wasn't much to it. One day I was out walking and I had turned around to look at the view as I was walking up a bridge, and I was walking backwards, and somebody else was doing the same thing coming from the other direction. And we bumped into each other. And that's when I met Manfred Quinn. I'd never seen anyone like him before. He was English and he was also doing an internship. The first few days we didn't really do much. We just kept meeting on the bridge and talking. We just seemed to keep passing by each other at around the same time. He was on the way to where he was going, and I was on the way to the paper. Every day, I'd tell him another story that I'd made up, and he would tell a joke or two. We just had nice conversations. I began to start falling for him. One thing led to another. And then one night, on the bridge, he kissed me.
I was so in love with him. There's only so many days that I had to be there. I don't think either one of us cared that we would soon be apart. Or maybe we just weren't thinking of it. I think we were both just riding the roller coaster. And everything was still just going up. One night, he offered to walk me home, and I let him. We got back to my place, and we stood outside talking a little more. Guess I just couldn't resist. I invited him in, and one thing led to another, and we were in bed. And over the next few days, we were in bed a few more times, in a few other places. And then suddenly I found myself alone. The paper had given me an assignment in another town. It was just a little bit too far to be able to see him. Some days we would talk on the phone when we could. I spent my days doing research and writing articles, and I tried to keep busy. I went shopping and bought new clothes. I tried to think of other things I might like to do, but mostly I thought about him. It had been about 6 weeks since I'd seen him, and one day I woke up and my stomach was in knots. I was very sick. I threw up. I thought it might be morning sickness. I thought I might be pregnant. But there were no pregnancy tests in the town I was staying. They didn't have a drugstore. I didn't feel well enough to travel, and I was too embarrassed to ask a stranger to go get me a test, nor did I want to see a doctor yet. I was so worried, but I was also excited. I always wanted to have a baby. Of course, I was worried because I was far from home, and I didn't know how he would feel, but I needed to tell him that I might be pregnant. I was hoping I could take the test with him, and we could find out the results together. I called him and told him that I'd like to meet him at our cafe, and I tried my best to come up with the right words. Can you imagine that? A writer and storyteller not knowing the words. But finally I said, Manfred, I might be pregnant. And I waited. I wanted him to say that everything would be okay. I wanted him to be happy and that we would work it out. But instead of my dreams coming true, it turned to a nightmare. He said that he didn't want kids and that he didn't care whether I was pregnant or not and that I was on my own. I couldn't believe that he had said that. For the first time in my life, I was angry. I was really angry at somebody, and I told him to just go. I can't believe he had said that. How could he do the one thing that a man shouldn't do? I know we were young and foolish, but I still thought he would do the right thing. But he didn't, and I was devastated. I had to make up my mind that no matter what, I was going to have my baby, and I was going to love it. even without him. A few days later, I took a pregnancy test, and it came back that I wasn't pregnant. I didn't know that a heart that was already broken could break again, but mine did. After a few days of crying, I had to remind myself that thankfully it wasn't really a baby that I had lost. It was only the chance that I might have another chance someday. But it still hurt, and I still loved him. But I had to be done with him and go home. My trip was over. And that was the last time I saw him. I came home and I started the next year of college and was helping Lexi with the dresses. And somewhere along the way, I thought maybe I'll be a teacher. I'm so sorry, Fiona. Thank you, Tiffany. You're an awesome teacher. Thanks. Let's go take a break and I'll make you something special. We headed to the break room and she brewed a pot of coffee. She said, I'm gonna show you something that I used to drink when I was in Europe. It's just coffee, but I put a little bit of European chocolate in there. I figured since I was sharing with you already, I might as well share that. When you're ready to tell me something, we'll get started. It took me a minute, but I started to tell her everything. I didn't hold back. She gave some opinions and some ideas, but she was never discouraging. I told her about Grant and Ivy and Harold and Jack and all the confusion over what I heard and thought I heard and how I was gonna try to do this play to make sense of all of it. And she said, well, it's a good idea, but we've got to be careful with that. You never know what's gonna happen. You can plan for that all you want, but somebody else might put a monkey wrench in it. You're right, Fiona. But I definitely need to try something. I agree that you've got to try something. We just have to be very careful. I think no matter what we do, somebody's gonna get hurt. Are you prepared to be hurt? Because I think you're going to be hurt if things don't go right. It may turn out that he actually loves her. Sometimes people appear to not like each other and they fall in love. And sometimes two people who really do love each other find out there's just something they can't love about the other. And I don't want you to have to go through that regret the way I did. Fiona was right. There is that chance that Harold and Ivy could end up with each other. And it could be meant to be. And I definitely wouldn't want to ruin that if they really would love each other. But I need to know that that's what's going to happen. I need to know Ivy actually loves him. And I need to know he actually loves her. But Fiona's also right. That I need to make sure that I love him. And that I won't have any surprises. I know I want kids. But I also want other things. Now, Tiffany, I want you to write the story first. Get a good story with lots of good characters. and then we'll turn that into a play. I don't want you to get too ahead of yourself, trying to focus too much on the main characters. We're gonna have to make sure there's other characters involved and other stories. We also have to make sure Miss Bird is involved somehow, or we won't have a play. We might need to have some sort of actual assignment so others can make their own plays. Maybe we can work something out with her. You're right, Fiona. I just realized I'd been calling her Fiona. It felt so different. You don't mind that I'm calling you Fiona, do you? Not at all. You and I are friends. Of course, you gotta be careful doing that in school. But I'm sure you already know that. Yes, Fiona. Did you meet anybody else after Manfred? No. I finished college and did some of my writing and got my teaching job, and you don't meet a lot of men working here. And to be honest, I really don't want to be with anybody else. Unless I met somebody special. But I'm not really looking. Do you think he ever regretted what he said? There's always that chance. We're all human. We can all make mistakes. Well, it's time to lock up and go home. So we headed to the door, and she went across the street to bring the truck around, and I stood by the front door. I saw Ivy and Jamie walk by. They were talking. Then they stopped to sit on one of the benches. The door was cracked open, so I could hear what they were talking about. Ivy was griping about something. That was a good movie, Ivy. So how's it going with Harold? Everything is lovely with Jack. He's such a big goof, but in a cute way. He's a sweet guy. He can be a bit annoying, though. Wow, what do you mean? Sometimes he just goes on and on about things I don't really want to talk about. Like what? Well, he finally walked me home today. As we were walking, a lady passed us pushing a stroller, and he just had to stop and make goo-goo faces at the baby. I mean, I like kids too, but I don't go around acting like Mr. Rogers. And as he was doing that, some car stopped at the intersection playing some go-go song, and he started dancing and singing for the kid. I had to give him a tug so we could get going. I was so embarrassed. Yeah, that sounds like a bit much. And then not even 5 minutes later it started raining, so he says, "Let's go in here." And we went into the hardware store. He says they should have umbrellas in here. While we were in line, that Mad About You song came on, and he started dancing and spinning around like some fool, and I felt like crawling under a rock. And then he said something about it being our song, and I was like, "What are you talking about?" I didn't tell him, but I can't stand that song. I'm so tired of the radio playing her songs all the time. And then he just wouldn't shut up about Belinda the whole time the rest of the way to my house. I know what you mean. When I'm working in the grocery store, I have to hear those songs every day. So what are you gonna do? Nothing, unless he keeps embarrassing me. I still think I'm falling for the lovable buffoon. I just wish he'd stop jabbering about Belinda. I can't stand her. Bill, my beautiful daughter, my best friend Ivy had crossed the line, and she brought out the monster in your mother. I was no longer concerned with whether I hurt her or not. I was going to protect Harold, and I was going to win him. She didn't deserve him, and he didn't deserve to be treated that way either. It was on.
During the drive home, I don't think I said a word. Fiona was doing a lot of talking, but my head was still spinning. I don't even know if I was still dreaming or not. Maybe she didn't mean it, but she said it. She said those things. And Harold was just being himself. I just felt that sooner or later she was gonna hurt him, and he's not gonna deserve it. He doesn't know that she thinks these things about him. I didn't know that either, but I do. I can't just go tell him, so I'm gonna have to stick with my plans, and I'm gonna have to try to lay low. I'm gonna have to try to get them to stay together and see if they can fall apart on their own. But if I see my opening, I'm gonna have to make my move. I still don't really want to hurt her, but if push comes to shove, I'm not the one that's gonna get hurt, and neither is Harold or Jack. Thank you for watching episode 5 of World Without You.